Long before a person loses hope, an unseen battle has already been fought within them. And long before greatness is achieved, a silent decision changes the direction of a life forever. History remembers the visible moment. The fallen empire, the triumphant invention, the legendary leader. But it almost never remembers the invisible force that made it possible. This is the greatest secret hidden in plain sight. The invisible always comes first, yet nearly everyone spends their lives fighting shadows while ignoring the light that casts them. They struggle to change their circumstances without ever questioning the unseen patterns that created those circumstances in the first place. Across thousands of years, civilizations separated by oceans and centuries arrived at the same astonishing conclusion. The Stoics believed that a person's inner world determined the quality of their outer life. Buddhist masters taught that the mind shapes suffering long before events do. The Desert Fathers abandoned cities in search of a kingdom that could not be seen. Hermetic philosophers declared, "As within, so without." Plato suggested that the world perceived by the senses was only a reflection of a deeper reality. Even Genesis begins with the invisible bringing forth the visible. Different cultures, different ages, one timeless truth. This book is not asking you to believe in magic, superstition, or fantasy. It is inviting you to rediscover principles that have quietly shaped human destiny since the beginning of history. You will uncover why most people never unlock their true potential, the invisible chains that keep humanity trapped, the 7 forgotten powers hidden within every human spirit, and the ancient art of becoming unshakable in a world consumed by noise and distraction. By the time this journey ends, you will not simply see reality differently. You will begin to see yourself differently. Chapter 1. Why most people never unlock their true potential. Throughout history, humanity has searched for extraordinary power in extraordinary places. Some crossed deserts in pursuit of hidden temples. Others climbed lonely mountains, hoping to find enlightened masters. Kings commissioned expeditions for lost libraries, while philosophers devoted entire lifetimes to discovering the secret behind greatness. Yet among the Stoics of Rome, the monks of the eastern forests, and the silent desert fathers of Egypt, one unsettling conclusion appeared again and again. The greatest obstacle to human greatness was never the world itself. It was the invisible prison each person carried within. This prison had no iron bars, no locked gates, and no guards. It was constructed from fear, doubt, false beliefs, and habits so familiar that few people ever recognized them as chains. The tragedy was not that these chains were unbreakable. The tragedy was that most people mistook them for their own identity. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, once born into slavery, understood this better than most. Although his body had belonged to another man, he insisted that true slavery did not begin with chains around the wrists. It began when fear ruled the mind. A person who could not control anger, envy, pride, or anxiety remained imprisoned even after every external chain had been removed. Another person, stripped of possessions and comfort, yet possessing mastery over his own thoughts, could remain inwardly free. This reversal challenged everything society believed about power. Buddhist wisdom approached the same mystery from another direction. The Buddha observed that human suffering was often born not from events themselves, but from the mind's endless grasping. It clung to pleasure, resisted pain, feared loss, and demanded certainty from a world that never promised permanence. Every attachment became another invisible thread binding the spirit. Every fear of losing became another prison wall. The desert fathers, who abandoned cities to live in the silence of the Egyptian wilderness, discovered yet another version of this hidden captivity. They were not fleeing civilization because they despised people. They were escaping distraction. They understood that noise does not only exist outside the mind. The loudest voices often arise within. The endless conversation of comparison, ambition, resentment, regret, and imagined futures. Before a person can govern a kingdom, they said, they must first govern these inner voices. Modern life has not removed this prison. It has merely furnished it more comfortably. Many people believe freedom means having unlimited choices, endless entertainment, and constant convenience. Yet ancient wisdom would ask a difficult question. If comfort makes you afraid of hardship, if approval determines your happiness, and if distraction prevents you from ever meeting yourself, are you truly free? Comfort, when it becomes an addiction rather than a blessing, quietly transforms into captivity. A traveler once came to an old sage carrying 2 heavy bags across a mountain path. One bag contained stones gathered from places he had visited. The other contained precious coins earned through years of labor. Exhausted, he complained that the climb had become impossible. The sage smiled and asked only one question. Which burden is the mountain forcing you to carry? The mountain forces nothing, replied the traveler. I chose to carry them. So it is with every invisible burden, the old man answered. The world rarely imprisons us. More often, we refuse to set down what no longer serves us. Psychology now describes similar truths in different language. Many people unknowingly build identities around limitation. They begin saying, I am anxious, instead of I experience anxiety. They say, I am unlucky, instead of I faced difficult circumstances. Over time, passing experiences become permanent identities. The mind stops distinguishing between who we are and what we have endured. Ancient philosophers warned against this confusion centuries ago. They believed identity should rest upon character rather than circumstance. Storms may surround a person, but they need not become the storm itself. Fear is perhaps the oldest architect of this invisible prison. Fear whispers that failure will define us forever. Fear convinces us that rejection is fatal, uncertainty unbearable, and change dangerous. Yet the ancient schools repeatedly taught that fear grows strongest precisely where understanding grows weakest. Imagine a child entering a dark room for the first time. Shadows appear as monsters until a single candle is lit. The monsters vanish, not because they were defeated, but because they never truly existed. So too many fears dissolve not through force, but through clearer perception. This is why wisdom traditions placed such extraordinary value upon awareness. Awareness is the candle carried into the dark room of the mind. The greatest transformation does not happen when the world changes around you. It begins when you see yourself more clearly than your fears allow. Ancient initiates often underwent years of preparation before receiving higher teachings. Modern readers sometimes imagine hidden rituals or secret symbols, yet many surviving texts suggest something far simpler. Before learning any mystery, the student first had to become honest with themselves. Pride had to be recognized. Fear had to be admitted. Self-deception had to end. Only then could genuine learning begin. True potential has never been hidden because the universe wished to keep secrets. It remains hidden because few possess the courage to examine the invisible walls surrounding their own lives. The greatest prison has invisible walls, and the first key has always been self-awareness. Long before he became one of history's greatest Stoic teachers, Epictetus lived as a slave in Rome. His master possessed authority over his body, but never over his mind. According to ancient tradition, even when subjected to harsh treatment, Epictetus remained remarkably composed. Those who witnessed him wondered how someone without freedom could possess such peace. Years later, after gaining his liberty, students gathered around him, expecting lessons on politics, wealth, or power. Instead, he spoke almost entirely about mastering one's own judgments, desires, and fears. Many left disappointed. They had hoped to learn how to rule others. Epictetus taught them first to rule themselves. History remembers him not because he escaped slavery, but because he proved that inner freedom can exist long before outer freedom arrives. Chapter 2. The war inside every human. Every civilization has told stories of great battles. Empires rose and fell beneath the clash of armies. Kingdoms disappeared beneath the dust of conquest. Heroes earned immortality through victories against dragons, giants, and invading forces. Yet beneath these visible conflicts, ancient wisdom quietly described another battlefield, one that every human enters at birth and from which no one leaves unchanged. It is the war within. No army can fight it for you. No king can command it. No weapon can end it. It unfolds silently each day between fear and courage, desire and discipline, comfort and growth, illusion and truth. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire of his age, yet the pages of his private reflections reveal a surprising truth. Rarely did he speak about defeating foreign enemies. Instead, he returned constantly to mastering impatience, anger, pride, and despair. He understood that an emperor who conquered nations but remained conquered by his own impulses had achieved very little. His greatest battlefield was not Rome's frontier. It was his own heart. The Buddha fought a different battle. Born into luxury, surrounded by beauty and pleasure, he possessed everything most people believe will guarantee happiness. Yet the comforts of the palace gradually became another kind of prison. Protected from suffering, he remained separated from reality itself. One night he quietly walked beyond the palace gates. That single step became one of history's greatest acts of courage. He did not leave merely to abandon wealth. He left to confront truth. Old age, sickness, and death shattered the illusion that comfort alone could satisfy the human spirit. His external journey reflected an internal one. The willingness to leave certainty behind in order to discover wisdom. Growth almost always begins where comfort ends. The Desert Fathers understood this principle with equal clarity. Leaving prosperous cities behind, they entered barren landscapes where silence exposed every hidden weakness. In the desert, there were few distractions. Without constant entertainment or conversation, the true condition of the heart became impossible to ignore. They described thoughts arriving like travelers knocking upon a monastery gate. Some carried peace. Others brought fear, vanity, resentment, or despair. The wise monk did not invite every visitor inside. He learned discernment. Modern psychology echoes this ancient practice. Thoughts arise automatically, but whether they become beliefs depends upon our attention. We are not responsible for every thought that enters consciousness. We are responsible for which ones we choose to nurture. Every day the invisible battle continues. Fear says, "Stay where you are." Courage whispers, "Take one more step." Desire promises immediate pleasure. Discipline quietly builds lasting freedom. Comfort offers temporary safety. Growth asks for temporary discomfort in exchange for lasting transformation. This conflict is not evidence that something is wrong with us. It is evidence that we are alive. Ancient teachers never expected the battle to disappear. They taught us how to fight wisely. Consider the blacksmith shaping a sword. Fire alone cannot create strength, neither can repeated blows. Only the proper rhythm of heat, pressure, cooling, and refinement produces a blade worthy of trust. So too does the human spirit mature through repeated encounters with challenge, reflection, failure, and renewal. The invisible war is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to reveal you. During Rome's difficult campaigns along the northern frontier, Marcus Aurelius often rose before sunrise while soldiers still slept. Cold winds swept through the camp as reports of disease, rebellion, and uncertainty filled each day. Yet before issuing commands, he spent quiet moments writing reminders to himself. He did not write about defeating barbarians. He reminded himself to remain patient with difficult people, humble during success, courageous during hardship, and faithful to reason instead of fear. He understood a timeless truth. The fate of an empire often depends upon the unseen condition of one human mind. That ancient lesson remains unchanged. The greatest battles are rarely fought on distant fields. They are won or lost within the silent kingdom of the heart. Chapter 3: The 7 Forgotten Powers of the Human Spirit. Ancient teachers believed that every soul entered the world carrying invisible powers. These powers required no wealth, no noble birth, and no special privilege. They could not be stolen by kings nor destroyed by empires. They could only be forgotten. Modern life has become remarkably skilled at helping us forget. We are taught how to earn a living, yet rarely how to govern the mind. We learn to master machines while remaining strangers to ourselves. The old mystery schools insisted that before a person could understand the outer world, they must first awaken the 7 inner powers that shape every experience. The first power is attention. The Buddha repeatedly returned to this single truth. Where attention goes, life follows. A distracted mind becomes the servant of every passing impulse. A focused mind becomes the architect of destiny. An old Zen story tells of a young student who asked his master how enlightenment could be found. The master simply handed him a cup and asked him to carry it across the temple courtyard without spilling a single drop, while monks shouted, laughed, and argued around him. The student returned successfully. "What did the others say?" asked the master. "I do not know," the student replied. "I was watching the cup, so it is with wisdom." The master smiled. Life belongs to whatever receives your full attention. Modern psychology reaches a remarkably similar conclusion. Attention determines learning, emotional regulation, relationships, and even happiness. The world has not changed nearly as much as our attention has. Guard it carefully. The second forgotten power is imagination. Plato taught that every visible creation first existed in the invisible world of ideas. Long before cathedrals rose toward heaven or bridges crossed mighty rivers, someone imagined them. Imagination is not escape from reality. It is the birthplace of reality. Carl Jung believed that symbols emerging from the imagination often reveal truths the logical mind cannot yet explain. The greatest artists, inventors, reformers, and saints all possess the ability to see possibilities invisible to others. The practical lesson is simple. Spend time each day imagining not only what you wish to possess, but who you are becoming. The third forgotten power is faith. Faith is often misunderstood as believing without evidence. Ancient wisdom described something deeper. Faith meant walking before certainty arrived. Every farmer plants long before harvest appears. Every sailor leaves shore before seeing the destination. The Hebrew patriarch Abraham left his homeland without knowing precisely where the journey would end. The Buddha left his palace. Socrates accepted death rather than betray his convictions. Faith is movement, not hesitation. Modern life often demands guarantees before action. Ancient wisdom taught the opposite. Sometimes action reveals what certainty never could. The fourth power is silence. The Desert Fathers withdrew into the wilderness because they believed silence was not the absence of sound, but the presence of truth. Only when external noise subsides do the quieter movements of the soul become audible. Many fear silence because it introduces them to themselves. Yet every great tradition treated silence as sacred. Within it, scattered thoughts settle like muddy water becoming clear. Silence restores perspective. The fifth forgotten power is will. Will is not stubbornness. It is the quiet ability to continue choosing what is right long after emotion has disappeared. Ancient Spartan training, Stoic discipline, and samurai philosophy all emphasize that character is forged through repeated acts of voluntary discipline. Great lives are rarely built by dramatic moments. They are built by ordinary decisions repeated faithfully over many years. Every morning offers another opportunity to strengthen the will. The sixth forgotten power is gratitude. Many people imagine gratitude as polite appreciation. Ancient teachers saw it as a way of seeing reality itself. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself to notice simple blessings before complaining about temporary hardships. Gratitude enlarges perception. It teaches the mind to recognize opportunities hidden beneath ordinary moments. A grateful heart notices abundance where others notice only absence. The seventh forgotten power is discernment. Not every voice deserves obedience. Not every desire deserves fulfillment. Not every opportunity deserves acceptance. King Solomon became legendary, not merely because of intelligence, but because of discernment. The ability to distinguish appearance from essence. Modern life overwhelms us with information, opinions, and endless choices. Discernment allows us to separate wisdom from noise, truth from persuasion, and lasting value from temporary excitement. Without discernment, knowledge becomes confusion. With discernment, even simple truths become life-changing. Together, these seven powers form humanity's original inheritance. They are not supernatural gifts reserved for a chosen few. They are natural capacities waiting to be remembered. The greatest loss was never that humanity became weak. It was that humanity forgot its own strength. Ancient tradition tells of a philosopher who welcomed new students into a quiet chamber beneath the library of Alexandria. Before any lessons began, he lit 7 oil lamps. The first teaches attention, he said, pointing to the steady flame. The second, imagination. The third, faith. The fourth, silence. The fifth, will. The sixth, gratitude. And the seventh, discernment. A student asked which lamp was brightest. The old philosopher smiled. None shines alone. Remove even one, and the room grows darker. Many years later, those students forgot the chamber, but they never forgot the lesson. Greatness does not emerge from one extraordinary gift. It arises when every inner power burns together. Chapter 4. The Seven Doors of Consciousness. The ancient mystery schools often spoke of initiation not as entering a secret society, but as passing through invisible gates within oneself. Every human being, whether aware of it or not, walks through these gates each day. Most pass unconsciously. The wise pass deliberately. These are the seven doors of consciousness. Every destiny passes through them. The first door is attention. Nothing enters the inner world without first passing through awareness. Attention decides which ideas are planted, which emotions are strengthened, and which habits eventually become character. Imagine a gardener tending fertile soil. Seeds of flowers and weeds fall alike. The gardener's task is not preventing every seed from arriving, but choosing which ones receive care. Your attention is that gardener. Protect it from constant distraction, for attention eventually becomes identity. The second door is imagination. After attention observes reality, imagination begins shaping what reality might become. Every civilization began inside someone's imagination. Every invention, philosophy, work of art, and act of compassion existed first as an unseen possibility. The ancient builders of Egypt saw monuments long before they lifted stone. Likewise, every human life is quietly sculpted by repeated inner pictures. Imagine wisely. The third door is belief. Belief transforms possibility into expectation. Two travelers may walk the same road. One expects kindness and notices generosity. The other expects betrayal and discovers only suspicion. Often both encounter similar events, yet each experiences a different world because belief filters perception. Psychology now confirms what sages long suspected. Expectations influence attention, emotion, memory, and behavior. Belief silently writes tomorrow's decisions. The fourth door is speech. Words are thoughts made visible. The Book of Proverbs teaches that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Not because words perform magic, but because they shape relationships, identity, and action. A person repeatedly saying, "Nothing ever works for me," slowly trains the mind to search for evidence supporting that belief. Speech becomes architecture. Build carefully. The fifth door is emotion. Emotion is powerful but unreliable as a ruler. Stoics never argued that feelings should disappear. They taught that emotions become wise servants when guided by reason and dangerous masters when left unattended. Fear can preserve life. It can also imprison it. Joy can inspire generosity. It can also become reckless excitement. The wise welcome emotion without surrendering authority to it. The sixth door is action. Ideas remain dreams until translated into behavior. Hermetic teachers insisted that thought, without corresponding action, remains incomplete. A seed contains an entire forest in potential, but only planting allows possibility to become reality. Daily actions appear insignificant until years reveal their accumulated power. Character is built quietly, one decision at a time. The seventh and final door is silence. After attention, imagination, belief, speech, emotion, and action have shaped the day, silence returns to examine them all. Silence is the chamber where wisdom gathers scattered experience into understanding. It is here that mistakes become teachers instead of burdens. It is here that the soul remembers itself. The seven doors do not stand separately. Each opens into the next. Attention shapes imagination. Imagination influences belief. Belief guides speech. Speech affects emotion. Emotion directs action. Action returns us to silence, where reflection prepares tomorrow's attention. Thus the circle continues, every day, every life, every destiny. Ancient tradition speaks of a temple hidden beyond the desert, whose sanctuary could only be reached by passing through 7 gates. Travelers expected each gate to be guarded by soldiers. Instead, they found only mirrors. At the first gate, they saw where their attention wandered. At the second, what they secretly imagined. At the third, what they truly believed. At the fourth, the words that shaped their lives. At the fifth, the emotions they obeyed. At the sixth, the actions that revealed their character. At the seventh, they entered complete silence. Only then did they realize the temple had never been testing their strength. It had been revealing their consciousness, and the greatest sanctuary was not hidden beyond the gates. It had quietly existed within them all along. Chapter 5. Faith Beyond Belief. There is a kind of faith that depends upon certainty. It believes because every answer has already been provided. But the oldest wisdom traditions spoke of another kind of faith, quieter, deeper, and far more demanding. It is the faith that continues walking when the road disappears into fog. It is the courage to move before understanding arrives. It is not blind belief, but disciplined trust. The Desert Fathers, who withdrew into the silent deserts of Egypt during the 3rd and 4th centuries, did not seek miracles or visions as their greatest achievement. They sought something more difficult, a heart that remained steady whether life brought abundance or hardship. Alone beneath endless skies, stripped of comfort and applause, they discovered that faith was not measured by how loudly one proclaimed conviction, but by how calmly one continued when nothing seemed certain. Modern life has taught us to demand guarantees before we begin. We want certainty before commitment, success before effort, and proof before perseverance. Yet no farmer waits until harvest appears before planting seeds. No sailor demands to see the distant shore before raising the sails. Life itself rewards those willing to step forward before every answer is revealed. Faith is not the absence of uncertainty. It is movement despite uncertainty. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus reminded his students that no human being controls the winds of fortune. Wealth may disappear, health may weaken, reputation may rise and fall with the opinions of strangers. The only true possession is one's response. Faith, therefore, was not confidence that life would unfold according to personal desire. It was confidence that one's character could remain intact, regardless of circumstance. Marcus Aurelius wrote many of his reflections while leading an empire through war, plague, and political unrest. He did not write from a place of comfort, but from constant instability. Yet his journals reveal remarkable tranquility. Again and again he returned to one quiet conviction. If a person governs the inner kingdom, the outer kingdom loses much of its power to disturb. This is faith beyond belief. It is inner stability. Psychologically, human beings often mistake certainty for safety. We imagine that if only we knew the future, fear would disappear. Yet history tells another story. Many who possessed great wealth lived in constant anxiety. Others, possessing little, carried extraordinary peace because their confidence rested not upon changing circumstances, but upon enduring principles. The ancient sages understood something modern psychology now confirms. Resilience is born less from predicting the future than from trusting one's ability to meet it. The oak tree does not negotiate with the storm before it arrives. Its strength has already been cultivated through years of unseen growth. Likewise, faith is built quietly through countless ordinary acts of integrity, long before life's greatest trials appear. There is a story told among the desert fathers of a young monk who complained that he could not hear the voice of God despite years of prayer. The elder smiled gently and handed him a clay jar. "Fill this with water from the distant spring," he instructed. The young monk obeyed. By the time he returned, much of the water had spilled onto the desert path Agin the elder sent him. Agin the water was lost. This continued for many days until frustration overcame the student. "What purpose does this serve?" he finally asked. The elder pointed toward the dusty path. Where the water had repeatedly fallen, small flowers had begun to bloom. "You believed nothing was happening because you watched only the jar," said the elder. "You never noticed the path." Faith often works the same way. Its deepest transformations occur where we are not looking. How many acts of kindness change lives without our knowledge? How many patient conversations prevent future conflicts? How many moments of perseverance quietly shape a character capable of carrying great responsibility years later? The human mind longs for immediate evidence. Wisdom teaches delayed vision. Ancient wisdom also distinguishes faith from wishful thinking. Wishful thinking waits passively for circumstances to improve. Faith acts responsibly while remaining inwardly free from panic. The Stoics combined trust with disciplined effort. The Desert Fathers combined surrender with relentless self-examination. Neither tradition encouraged passivity. Faith walks, fear waits. This principle appears repeatedly throughout human history. Explorers crossed unknown oceans, guided only by stars. Builders raised cathedrals they would never live to see completed. Teachers planted ideas whose harvest belonged to future generations. None possessed certainty, all possessed conviction. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding of faith is believing it belongs only to religion. In truth, every meaningful human endeavor requires it. A physician believes years of study will eventually serve suffering people. Parents invest decades nurturing children whose future they cannot predict. Artists continue painting before anyone applauds. Scientists pursue discoveries that may never arrive within their lifetimes. Faith is woven into every worthwhile life. The ancient teachers would simply add one final insight: plea your deepest faith, not in outcomes, but in the quiet refinement of your own soul. Outcomes belong partly to circumstance. Character belongs to you. Walk faithfully. The path reveals itself. An old tradition speaks of a solitary pilgrim who journeyed across the Sinai wilderness, hoping to reach a monastery famous for its wisdom. After weeks of walking, a violent sandstorm erased every visible trail. Convinced he was hopelessly lost, the pilgrim prepared to abandon the journey. An elderly monk, traveling the same desert, found him sitting in despair. "How do you know which direction to walk?" the pilgrim asked. The monk looked upward. "The stars disappear during the storm," he replied, "but they have not ceased to exist." That night, the wind settled. The stars returned exactly where they had always been. The pilgrim realized the heavens had never abandoned him. Only his sight had been clouded. So it is with faith. Truth does not vanish because certainty temporarily does. Chapter 6. The Invisible Chains That Control Humanity. Many prisons are built from stone. The most dangerous are built from habits. The ancient philosophers rarely described humanity as physically imprisoned. Instead, they spoke of invisible chains, subtle forces that quietly govern thought, emotion, and behavior while convincing people they are completely free. These chains cannot be touched, yet entire civilizations have lived beneath their weight. The Stoics called them passions without mastery. Buddhism called them attachments. Ecclesiastes described humanity endlessly chasing the wind. Though their languages differed, their warning was remarkably similar. Most people are ruled by forces they have never consciously examined. The first chain is fear. Fear is necessary for survival. Without it, our ancestors would never have avoided danger. But ancient wisdom distinguished between useful fear and imagined fear. Useful fear protects life. Imagined fear controls life. How many dreams have been abandoned before they began because someone feared failure? How many friendships never formed because vulnerability felt dangerous? How many talents remained buried beneath the quiet voice whispering, "What if you are not enough?" Fear often speaks with great confidence. Wisdom quietly asks for evidence. The Buddha taught that much human suffering arises not from events themselves, but from the stories attached to them. Likewise, Epictetus reminded his students that people are disturbed less by circumstances than by the judgments they make about those circumstances. Observe fear. Do not obey it automatically. The second invisible chain is habit. Every repeated action slowly becomes easier to repeat again. What begins as a choice eventually becomes automatic. Ancient teachers understood this long before neuroscience explained neural pathways and habit loops. Character is simply habit made visible. This truth carries both warning and hope. Harmful habits quietly imprison us, yet small faithful disciplines possess equal power to set us free. Every repeated choice is constructing tomorrow's self. The third chain is comparison. No generation has escaped it. Though modern life has multiplied its intensity, comparison steals contentment because it asks us to measure an inner life against someone else's outward appearance. Ecclesiastes observed that much human striving springs from rivalry rather than genuine purpose. People labor not because they love meaningful work, but because they cannot bear appearing lesser than their neighbors. Comparison creates endless poverty. Someone will always possess more. Ancient wisdom therefore redirected attention inward. Mesh today's character against yesterday's, not your life against another's. The fourth chain is desire. Desire itself is not the enemy. Without desire, nothing would ever be created. The problem arises when desire becomes identity. Buddhism teaches that attachment transforms healthy preference into suffering. We begin believing happiness depends entirely upon obtaining one particular outcome. Then freedom disappears. Desire becomes demand. Demand becomes anxiety. Anxiety becomes bondage. The wise learn to pursue worthy goals while remaining inwardly free should circumstances change. This is not indifference. It is mature freedom. The fifth chain is noise. Never before has humanity been surrounded by so much information while possessing so little silence. Noise is more than sound. It includes endless opinions, constant distraction, unexamined entertainment, relentless urgency. The Desert Fathers fled into silence, not because they hated society, but because they understood something timeless. A noisy mind cannot hear wisdom. Silence is not escape, it is recovery. Psychologically, every one of these chains shares a common feature. They thrive beneath unconsciousness. The moment awareness shines upon them, their power begins to weaken. Fear exposed becomes manageable. Habit examined becomes changeable. Comparison questioned becomes unnecessary. Desire understood becomes balanced. Noise interrupted becomes silence. Freedom begins with seeing clearly. This explains why every great wisdom tradition placed awareness before transformation. One cannot escape chains one refuses to acknowledge. The ancient philosophers never promised lives free from difficulty. They promised something greater, freedom within difficulty. A person may possess wealth and remain imprisoned by fear. Another may possess little, yet walk through life with remarkable peace because the invisible chains have gradually fallen away. The greatest liberation is inward. Everything else follows. Chapter 7. The invisible wealth hidden inside every human being. Throughout history, humanity has searched endlessly for hidden treasure. Explorers crossed oceans, kings waged wars, and entire civilizations rose and fell in pursuit of gold, precious stones, fertile land, and overflowing storehouses. Yet the oldest wisdom traditions quietly repeated a startling truth that many never understood. The greatest wealth was never buried beneath the earth. It was placed within the human spirit from the beginning. Most people spend their lives searching outward. The sages searched inward. The book of Proverbs declares that wisdom is more precious than rubies, and that nothing one desires can compare with it. Stoic philosophers reached a remarkably similar conclusion centuries later, insisting that virtue is the only possession that cannot be taken by fortune. Eastern traditions likewise taught that the awakened mind carries a treasure untouched by gain or loss. 3 civilizations, 1 eternal truth. True wealth is not measured by what you own, but by what remains when everything you own disappears. This is the forgotten inheritance of every human being. Many people mistake wealth for accumulation because the eyes naturally notice visible possessions. Houses can be counted, coins can be weighed, titles can be displayed, yet none of these reveal the true condition of a person's life. History is filled with rulers who possessed unimaginable riches while living in constant fear, suspicion, and emptiness. Their palaces were magnificent, but their minds remained impoverished. Outer abundance cannot cure inner poverty. Ancient teachers understood that invisible wealth always precedes visible prosperity. Before a harvest appears, the seed must contain life. Before a masterpiece is carved, the sculptor must possess vision. Before a nation is guided wisely, its leaders must possess integrity. Invisible riches become visible through time. The first of these treasures is wisdom. Wisdom is not simply the accumulation of information. Libraries can be filled with books, while hearts remain foolish. Wisdom is the ability to perceive life accurately and to act in harmony with truth rather than impulse. It grows slowly through observation, humility, suffering, and honest reflection. Knowledge answers questions. Wisdom asks better ones. The Stoics often reminded themselves that every difficulty carries instruction. Instead of asking why misfortune arrived, they asked what virtue the moment required. Was it courage, patience, compassion, self-restraint? In this way, every challenge became an investment in invisible wealth. The world sees obstacles. The wise see training. Closely beside wisdom stands integrity. Integrity is perhaps the rarest currency in any age because it cannot be manufactured through appearances. Reputation depends upon what others believe about you. Integrity depends upon who you remain when no one is watching. The difference is enormous. A reputation may open doors. Integrity allows you to walk through them without losing yourself. Ancient Egyptian officials often placed inscriptions within tombs, describing not their military victories or accumulated wealth, but the honesty with which they judged disputes. and the fairness with which they treated ordinary people. They believed these invisible qualities would accompany them long after earthly possessions disappeared. Character survives every transaction. Gold does not. Vision forms another hidden treasure. Every civilization that transformed history first imagined a future different from the present. Great cathedrals stood first within imagination. Great discoveries existed first as questions. Great movements began with invisible convictions held by individuals courageous enough to see beyond current limitations. Vision allows a person to recognize possibilities where others perceive only obstacles. Without vision, abundance appears impossible. With vision, obstacles become raw materials. Psychologically, vision reshapes perception itself. Two people may encounter identical circumstances. One sees only limitation because fear narrows attention. The other notices opportunities hidden within difficulty because hope expands awareness. Circumstances matter. Vision interprets them. Perhaps no invisible wealth is more misunderstood than courage. Many assume courage means the absence of fear. Ancient wisdom teaches the opposite. Courage is choosing truth despite fear. It is acting according to conscience when comfort suggests retreat. Marcus Aurelius admitted his anxieties privately while continuing faithfully in public duty. Courage did not eliminate uncertainty. It simply refused to surrender to it. Fear always speaks first. Courage answers last. Compassion also belongs among humanity's greatest riches. The world often associates strength with domination, yet every enduring spiritual tradition identifies compassion as one of the highest expressions of genuine power. Compassion does not weaken judgment. It purifies it. It allows people to understand suffering without becoming consumed by bitterness. The compassionate person carries healing wherever they go. This wealth multiplies when shared. Unlike material possessions, compassion increases rather than diminishes through generosity. Eastern sages frequently compared compassion to a lamp lighting another lamp. The original flame loses nothing while the surrounding darkness decreases. Light expands by giving itself away. So does love. Another treasure hidden within every person is self-control. This virtue receives little admiration in cultures fascinated by instant gratification. Yet ancient philosophers consistently regarded self-mastery as the foundation upon which every other excellence rests. The individual who governs impulses governs destiny. The one governed by impulse becomes a servant of circumstance. Self-control is not repression. It is intelligent freedom. A rider who guides a powerful horse demonstrates mastery, not cruelty. Likewise, disciplined desires become tremendous sources of creative energy. Undisciplined desires gradually become chains. The Stoics understood this deeply. They practiced voluntary simplicity, not because comfort was evil, but because dependence weakens freedom. If happiness requires ideal circumstances, then circumstances become one's master. But if peace arises from disciplined character, freedom accompanies every season of life. Own your desires. Do not let them own you. Modern psychology increasingly confirms what ancient wisdom always suggested. Long-term fulfillment depends less upon acquiring external rewards than upon developing qualities such as resilience, gratitude, purpose, emotional regulation, and meaningful relationships. These invisible assets repeatedly predict flourishing across cultures. The invisible quietly governs the visible. This truth transforms success itself. When wisdom becomes your treasure, No failure is entirely wasted. When integrity becomes your wealth, dishonesty cannot tempt you for long. When courage becomes your inheritance, uncertainty loses much of its power. When compassion becomes your habit, loneliness gradually dissolves. When self-control becomes your companion, external abundance becomes stewardship rather than addiction. These treasures cannot be stolen because they exist beyond possession. Fire cannot burn them. Time cannot age them. Thieves cannot carry them away. This is why every authentic wisdom tradition directs attention inward before outward. The invisible wealth within the human spirit quietly determines how every visible resource will eventually be used. The richest person may possess little. The poorest may own everything. Choose your treasure carefully. Ancient Jewish tradition tells of a wealthy merchant who traveled across distant kingdoms seeking the greatest treasure in existence. His caravans returned laden with ivory, silk, spices, and precious jewels, yet dissatisfaction followed him wherever he went. One evening he encountered an elderly sage living in remarkable simplicity beside a desert well. The merchant laughed gently. "Old man," he said, "you own almost nothing." The sage smiled. "And yet," he replied, "everything I own travels wherever I go." Curious, the merchant asked what treasure could never be lost. The old man pointed first to his heart, wisdom, then to his hands, integrity, then toward the horizon, vision. Finally, he placed his hand upon the merchant's shoulder. "When thieves arrive," he whispered, "they can only take what was never truly yours." The merchant remained silent for a long time. Years later, people remembered him not for the riches he collected, but for the generosity, fairness, and quiet wisdom with which he governed his household. At last, he had discovered wealth no caravan could carry. Chapter 8: Discernment, Seeing Beyond Appearances. One of the greatest dangers confronting every generation is not ignorance but illusion. Humanity rarely suffers because truth is completely absent. More often, people mistake appearances for reality, shadows for substance, and noise for wisdom. The ancient masters therefore regarded discernment as one of the highest powers a person could develop. Not merely the ability to gather information, but the capacity to perceive what lies beneath it. Wisdom begins where appearances end. Hermetic philosophy taught that every visible event possesses invisible causes. The law of correspondence invites the seeker to look beyond isolated happenings and discover deeper patterns operating beneath the surface. Proverbs echoes this insight repeatedly by praising discernment above impulsive judgment. Plato dramatized it through his allegory of the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows cast upon a wall for the whole of reality. Different teachers. The same warning. Most people believe what first appears before asking what first caused it. This tendency begins early in life. We instinctively judge success by possessions, confidence by loudness, happiness by smiles, and wisdom by eloquence. Yet life repeatedly proves how unreliable appearances can be. A cheerful face may conceal despair. Humble clothing may hide extraordinary understanding. Public success may mask private emptiness. The surface rarely tells the whole story. Discernment slows perception. Psychologically, the human brain naturally relies upon shortcuts. These mental patterns allow rapid decisions, but also create frequent errors. We form impressions within seconds, often mistaking familiarity for truth or confidence for competence. Ancient sages lacked modern terminology for cognitive bias, yet they recognized the danger intuitively. Never trust the first impression completely. Observe longer. The Hermetic initiate, therefore, practiced patient observation before forming conclusions. Rather than reacting immediately, they allowed events to unfold. They understood that time often reveals motives hidden during moments of excitement. Truth welcomes examination. Illusion demands haste. Imagine walking through a forest just before sunrise. In dim light, a twisted branch resembles a serpent. Fear surges instantly. Yet as daylight grows stronger, the imagined danger quietly disappears. The branch never changed. Only perception did. Much of human conflict follows this same pattern. We react not to reality itself, but to our interpretation of it. A misunderstood conversation becomes resentment. A delayed response becomes rejection. A temporary failure becomes permanent identity. Discernment interrupts these false conclusions. It asks calmly, what else might be true? This simple question has transformed countless lives. Plato believed philosophy begins in wonder because wonder delays certainty. The truly wise remain teachable. They recognize that every perspective is incomplete until examined from multiple angles. Certainty closes learning. Humility opens it. Discernment also penetrates hidden motives. Actions rarely arise from the reasons people publicly announce. Praise may conceal ambition. Anger may conceal fear. Generosity may conceal the desire for admiration. Likewise, apparent harshness may sometimes conceal deep compassion. Only patient observation distinguishes appearance from essence. The Book of Proverbs repeatedly advises readers to guard the heart because it recognizes that motives shape every decision long before actions become visible. The wise therefore examine themselves first before attempting to judge others. The hardest motives to discover are our own. This inner honesty forms the foundation of genuine discernment. It is easy to identify pride in another person while remaining blind to it within ourselves. Ancient wisdom therefore begins with self-examination. Remove the inner fog, then observe the world. The Hermetic tradition often described this process as polishing the mirror of consciousness. Dust upon a mirror distorts every reflection. Likewise, fear, prejudice, resentment, vanity, and desire distort perception itself. The world appears confused because the observer remains clouded. Clean the mirror, reality becomes clearer. This does not mean attaining perfect knowledge. Even the wisest remain students throughout life. Discernment is less about possessing absolute certainty than cultivating increasing clarity. It allows a person to remain calm amid conflicting opinions because they have learned to distinguish enduring principles from temporary appearances. Modern life makes this virtue more essential than ever. Endless information competes constantly for attention. Headlines provoke instant reactions. Images invite comparison. Opinions demand immediate agreement or rejection. The mind becomes crowded. Noise imitates importance. Silence restores perspective. The discerning person learns to pause before accepting every claim, fearing every prediction, or chasing every trend. They ask whether information produces wisdom or merely stimulation. They evaluate not only what is said, but why it is being said. Discernment protects freedom. Manipulation depends upon haste. Eventually, this practice extends beyond ideas into everyday living. One begins noticing subtle patterns within personal habits, relationships, emotional reactions, and recurring decisions. Every experience becomes a teacher, pointing toward deeper understanding. Appearances continue speaking. Discernment learns to listen beneath them. The reward for this discipline is remarkable peace. When circumstances no longer dictate perception, fear gradually loses authority. Wisdom replaces impulsiveness. Clarity overcomes confusion. The world still changes. The inner eye remains steady. A tradition associated with Plato tells of a young student who proudly declared after a single year of study that he now understood truth completely. The old philosopher smiled kindly and invited the student to walk through the marketplace. Pointing toward a beautifully polished bronze shield, Plato asked, "What do you see?" "A perfect reflection." The student answered confidently. Plato then covered the shield with dust gathered from the road. "And now?" The student frowned. "I see only distortion." Plato gently replied, "The world has not changed. Only the mirror has." The young man understood immediately. From that day forward, he sought first to cleanse his own mind before judging the world around him. Years later, he became known throughout Greece, not for quick opinions, but for extraordinary wisdom. For he had learned the rarest lesson of all: the clearest eyes belong to the quietest mind. Chapter 9. The invisible kingdom rules the visible world. Before there is a monument, there is an idea. Before there is a harvest, there is a seed. Before there is a civilization, there is a vision carried quietly within the minds of a few faithful people. The visible world is always the final chapter. The invisible world writes the beginning. The opening pages of Genesis describe creation itself unfolding through an unseen command before anything material appeared. Hermetic philosophy expressed the same mystery differently. The all is mind. Plato imagined a realm of eternal forms from which all earthly things take imperfect shape. Though separated by culture and centuries, these traditions point toward one profound insight. Reality is first organized inwardly before it is expressed outwardly. This principle is easy to overlook because our senses constantly persuade us that appearances are ultimate. We see the successful entrepreneur and notice the thriving business, yet rarely the years of invisible discipline that preceded it. We admire the wise elder without witnessing decades of quiet reflection, painful mistakes, and humble correction that formed such wisdom. We envy another person's peace without seeing the unseen habits that nourish it every day. Visual effects attract attention. Invisible causes create them. Modern psychology unexpectedly echoes this ancient insight. Researchers now understand that beliefs influence perception, perception shapes behavior, and repeated behavior gradually constructs destiny. Two individuals may encounter the same opportunity, yet one notices possibility while the other notices danger. The opportunity itself has not changed. The invisible architecture within each mind has. This is why the Hermetic masters devoted themselves first to inner mastery. They knew that attempting to repair life while ignoring consciousness resembles trimming branches while neglecting diseased roots. Temporary improvements may appear, but the deeper pattern eventually returns. The unseen always reappears. Consider an architect preparing to build a magnificent temple. Months may pass, while nothing visible rises from the ground. Curious observers could mistakenly conclude that nothing is happening. Yet beneath their notice, measurements are refined, foundations calculated, and every detail carefully planned. By the time the first stone is laid, the temple already exists within the architect's understanding. Human character develops in much the same way. Integrity is invisible until tested. Compassion remains hidden until someone suffers. Patience cannot be photographed, Yet these unseen qualities determine the shape of every visible decision. The tragedy of modern culture is not merely that it values visible success. It often neglects the invisible disciplines that make lasting success possible. We celebrate outcomes while overlooking formation. We admire achievements while ignoring character. We chase appearances while forgetting causes. Ancient wisdom reverses this order. Guard the root, the fruit will follow. The Hermetic law of correspondence teaches that the outer world continually reflects inner conditions. This does not mean every circumstance is directly caused by personal thought. Storms, illness, accidents, and injustice remain genuine parts of human existence. Rather, the principle suggests that our recurring responses, relationships, habits, and patterns often reveal deeper beliefs operating beneath conscious awareness. A person convinced they are unworthy may unknowingly reject opportunities that could transform their future. Another who quietly believes challenges are teachers instead of enemies approaches identical hardships with curiosity rather than despair. The visible circumstances may appear similar. The invisible kingdom within each person produces remarkably different outcomes. Psychologically, these invisible structures are built through countless experiences beginning in childhood. Praise or criticism, security or fear, belonging or rejection, all leave subtle impressions that later become assumptions about reality itself. Most people never examine these assumptions. They mistake inherited beliefs for objective truth. The sages refused such passivity. They questioned every invisible assumption. One student asked an old philosopher why he spent so much time in silence before making important decisions. The philosopher smiled. "When the water is disturbed," he replied, "you cannot see the stones beneath." Our minds behave similarly. Constant emotion clouds perception. Calm reveals structure. Plato's allegory of the cave illustrates this beautifully. Prisoners mistake shadows dancing upon a wall for reality itself because they have never turned toward the light casting those shadows. The cave is not merely a physical location. It represents the unconscious mind imprisoned by appearances. Many people still live there. They mistake temporary emotions for permanent identity. They mistake public opinion for truth. They mistake possessions for value. They mistake busyness for purpose. The invisible kingdom remains forgotten. Yet every great transformation in history began when someone looked beyond appearances. The abolition of injustice first existed as an invisible conviction before becoming law. Scientific discoveries first appeared as impossible ideas. Works of art first lived quietly in imagination. Everything visible bows eventually to the invisible. This truth carries profound responsibility. If unseen thoughts become repeated actions, then the cultivation of consciousness becomes humanity's greatest work. Every moment spent refining honesty, courage, gratitude, forgiveness, or humility quietly alters the architecture from which tomorrow's choices will emerge. The invisible kingdom expands one faithful decision at a time. Master yourself. Circumstances slowly follow. This is not instant transformation. The oak tree does not appear the morning after planting. Ancient wisdom consistently teaches patience because invisible growth often precedes visible change by months or years. Roots deepen long before branches reach the sky. Do not despise hidden seasons. They prepare lasting harvests. The wise, therefore, spend less energy manipulating appearances and more energy cultivating the inner life from which appearances naturally arise. They understand that peace cannot be purchased because it grows from disciplined perception. Confidence cannot be borrowed because it emerges through repeated integrity. Wisdom cannot be inherited because it is born from conscious experience. The invisible kingdom quietly governs them all. An old tradition from Hellenistic Egypt tells of a master builder commissioned to construct a great library hall in Alexandria. For nearly a year, the citizens complained that nothing remarkable could be seen. Workers dug trenches, inspected stones, and measured the earth endlessly without raising a single visible column. Some mocked the builder. Others demanded faster progress. The old architect answered only once. "If the foundation remains unseen," he said, "it is because it must carry everything that will later be admired." Years later, the completed hall stood through earthquakes that damaged surrounding buildings. Visitors praised the towering columns, polished marble, and magnificent roof, unaware that its greatest strength rested beneath their feet. So it is with the human spirit. The deepest victories are won where no audience is watching. Chapter 10. The ancient art of becoming unshakable. There exists a strength stronger than physical power, greater than wealth, and more enduring than reputation. It cannot be purchased, inherited, or stolen. Ancient philosophers called it tranquility. Samurai called it the immovable mind. Marcus Aurelius described it as the inner citadel. Whatever its name, it is the rare ability to remain inwardly steady while the outer world changes without warning. This was the true mark of mastery, not control over events, control over oneself. Most people spend their lives attempting to arrange circumstances so that peace becomes possible. They imagine that happiness waits beyond one more promotion, one more possession, one more solved problem. Yet every generation discovers the same disappointment. New circumstances produce new uncertainties. External control remains temporary. Inner stability alone endures. Epictetus understood this with extraordinary clarity. Born into slavery, he possessed almost no external freedom. Yet he taught emperors and senators because he had discovered a freedom beyond circumstance. A person's body might be restrained, he said, but no one can imprison the faculty that chooses how to interpret experience. Between event and response lies freedom. Guard that space. Marcus Aurelius carried similar wisdom into the heart of political chaos. As emperor of Rome, he faced betrayal, invasion, disease, and relentless responsibility. His private reflections rarely complain about circumstances. Instead, they continually return to one question: what kind of person will I choose to be today? He understood that greatness begins not with commanding others, but with governing oneself. Samurai philosophy echoed this principle from another corner of the world. Warriors trained not merely to wield swords, but to master fear before battle ever began. They practiced calm breathing, disciplined attention, and acceptance of mortality, because panic clouds judgment while serenity sharpens perception. Victory belongs to the prepared mind, not merely the stronger hand. Psychologically, emotional stability is often misunderstood as emotional suppression. Ancient wisdom teaches something very different. The Stoics did not deny sadness, anger, or grief. They simply refused to become servants of temporary emotion. Feel fully, choose wisely. Modern neuroscience now confirms what these teachers intuited centuries ago. Strong emotions narrow attention and encourage impulsive decisions. Calmness broadens awareness, allowing reason, creativity, and empathy to cooperate rather than compete. Calm is practical power, not passive weakness. Imagine standing beside a mountain lake at dawn. When the water is perfectly still, every tree and cloud reflects with astonishing clarity. Throw a single stone into its surface, and the reflection immediately fragments. The world has not changed. Only the water has. So it is with consciousness. Life's events are interpreted through the condition of the observing mind. This realization transforms conflict. When criticized, the untrained mind reacts instantly. Pride answers pride. Anger answers anger. Fear multiplies fear. But the disciplined mind pauses. It observes the first surge of emotion without surrendering authority to it. That pause changes everything. Within a single breath, freedom returns. The Desert Fathers practiced silence for precisely this reason. Before speaking, they learned to watch thoughts arise, like travelers crossing an open plain. Some thoughts deserved hospitality. Others merely passed through. Not every impulse required action. Not every thought deserves belief. The ancient masters became unshakable because they distinguished between what entered consciousness and what they allowed to remain there. One of the greatest illusions is believing emotional strength means never suffering. Marcus Aurelius mourned. The Buddha experienced sorrow. Samurai wept for fallen companions. Their greatness lay not in avoiding pain, but in refusing to let pain become permanent identity. Storms visit everyone. They need not become your address. The person who becomes unshakable gradually develops an inner fortress. Not walls that isolate them from others, but principles that anchor them amid uncertainty. Gratitude steadies prosperity. Humility softens success. Courage steadies fear. Compassion prevents bitterness. These virtues become invisible architecture stronger than any external defense. Such people are often mistaken for fortunate. In reality, they are prepared. Preparation, not luck, creates resilience. The unshakable individual still encounters failure, criticism, illness, disappointment, and loss. Yet each event becomes instruction rather than destruction. Instead of asking, "Why has this happened to me?" they quietly ask, "What is this experience teaching me?" Every challenge becomes a teacher. Every difficulty becomes training. Over time, this attitude transforms the entire experience of living. Circumstances lose much of their tyranny because identity no longer depends upon them. Peace ceases to be something pursued and becomes something carried. The world continues changing. The center remains still. A story preserved in Japanese tradition tells of a respected samurai who sought the wisdom of an elderly Zen monk. Though victorious in countless battles, the warrior confessed that he remained deeply troubled by anger. "Teach me peace," he demanded. The monk looked quietly into his eyes and said, "Then first, show me your anger." Immediately, the samurai's face flushed with rage. His hand reached instinctively toward the sword at his side. The monk bowed gently. "There," he said softly, "is the prison." Ashamed, the warrior slowly released his grip. His breathing steadied. His shoulders relaxed. The monk smiled again. "And here," he whispered, "is the gate." Years later, the samurai became known less for his victories in battle than for his remarkable calm in moments of crisis. Soldiers said he possessed a mysterious strength that frightened enemies more than any weapon. But the monk knew the truth. The greatest battle had never been fought on the battlefield. It had been won within the heart. Chapter 11. The Return of the Invisible Human. Every civilization eventually reaches a moment when it mistakes its greatest tools for its greatest treasures. It begins measuring success by speed instead of wisdom, possessions instead of character, information instead of understanding. The outer world becomes increasingly impressive, while the inner world quietly grows neglected. This has happened before. Ancient empires experienced it. Great kingdoms experienced it. Even remarkable individuals have experienced it. The greatest loss is rarely material. It is the forgetting of oneself. Throughout this journey, we have explored 7 invisible powers that every wisdom tradition, in its own language, regarded as humanity's original inheritance: attention, imagination, faith, silence, will, gratitude, and discernment. None of these can be purchased. None require extraordinary intelligence. None belong only to monks, philosophers, or mystics. They belong to every human being. The question has never been whether you possess them. The question is whether you remember to use them. Ancient teachers never believed transformation occurred through isolated moments of inspiration. They understood that genuine awakening happens through repeated daily practice. A single sunrise cannot nourish a forest. One act of courage cannot shape an entire life. Invisible strength grows through faithful repetition until character itself begins to change. Small disciplines, extraordinary lives. Attention is the first guardian. Where attention rests, life slowly follows. The distracted mind lives accidentally, pulled in countless directions by noise, fear, and endless stimulation. The attentive mind chooses deliberately. It notices beauty others overlook. It recognizes opportunities hidden within difficulty. It observes thoughts before believing them. Attention determines direction. Imagination follows. Many people treat imagination as childish fantasy, yet every great civilization first existed within someone's imagination. Before cathedrals touched the sky, they lived within unseen vision. Before peace enters a family, someone imagines forgiveness. Before justice transforms a nation, someone imagines a better future. Imagination becomes sacred when guided by wisdom. Faith sustains that vision when circumstances offer little encouragement. Ancient pilgrims crossed deserts without seeing the destination. Explorers sailed beyond familiar coastlines, trusting stars hidden behind clouds. Faith was never blind certainty. It was courageous movement despite uncertainty. The invisible becomes visible through perseverance. Yet perseverance requires silence. The modern world fears silence because silence reveals the condition of the soul. Constant entertainment allows people to escape themselves indefinitely. Ancient sages deliberately sought solitude because they understood that truth speaks quietly, noise scatters, silence gathers. Within silence, another forgotten power awakens: will. Will is not stubbornness. It is the quiet strength that repeatedly chooses what is right over what is merely comfortable. Marcus Aurelius exercised it daily while governing an empire. The desert fathers exercised it in lonely wilderness caves. Parents exercise it through faithful sacrifice. Honest workers exercise it through integrity when shortcuts appear easier. Will transforms intention into action. Without gratitude, however, even disciplined lives become heavy. Gratitude restores perspective. It reminds the heart that life contains gifts hidden within ordinary moments: a shared meal, a faithful friend, the breath entering your lungs, morning sunlight upon familiar ground. Gratitude enlarges invisible wealth. Finally comes discernment. Perhaps no power is more urgently needed today. Information multiplies endlessly, but wisdom remains rare. Discernment teaches the soul to distinguish truth from appearance, permanence from distraction, principles from passing fashions. Discernment protects every other virtue. Together, these 7 powers begin transforming ordinary existence into conscious living. They are not separate abilities competing for attention. They strengthen one another like the stones supporting a great arch. Remove one, and the structure weakens. Cultivate all 7, and the human spirit becomes remarkably resilient. This integration produces a new kind of leadership, not leadership driven by authority. Leadership born from example. Ancient Confucian teachers insisted that the highest ruler governs first through personal character. People naturally trust individuals whose actions quietly confirm their words. Influence rooted in integrity outlasts influence rooted in power. Leadership begins within. Service naturally follows. Modern culture often imagines greatness as being admired by many. Ancient wisdom imagined greatness differently. Greatness belonged to those whose presence quietly improved the lives of others. They solved problems without demanding applause. They comforted without seeking recognition. They taught without needing superiority. The invisible human leaves invisible blessings everywhere. This understanding transforms ordinary work itself. Every profession becomes sacred when approached with conscious attention and sincere service. A teacher shapes future generations. A craftsman honors excellence through careful labor. A parent quietly builds civilization within the walls of a single home. No faithful task is small. When performed consciously, every ordinary moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen invisible character. Washing dishes becomes gratitude. Listening becomes compassion. Working becomes stewardship. Difficulty becomes refinement. Life itself becomes the monastery. There is no need to withdraw from the world permanently. The Hermetic masters, Stoic philosophers, and wise elders of countless traditions consistently taught that the true initiate returns to ordinary life carrying extraordinary awareness. Markets become classrooms. Families become places of practice. Friendships become opportunities for service. The invisible human walks quietly, yet transforms everything they touch. An old tradition tells of a young seeker who spent 20 years studying among mountain sages. He mastered meditation, memorized sacred teachings, and learned profound philosophical truths. When his studies were complete, he expected to receive one final secret before returning home. The oldest teacher simply handed him a broom. Confused, the student asked, "Master, after all these years, is this truly my final lesson?" The elder smiled. "You came here seeking wisdom," he said. "Now return home and sweep your own doorstep with the same attention you once reserved for sacred texts. Speak to your neighbors with the same kindness you offered your teachers. Care for your family with the same devotion you showed your studies." The student bowed. Years later, travelers spoke not of a famous philosopher living in the village, but of an unusually peaceful man whose quiet presence made everyone around him a little wiser. The greatest teaching had never been hidden in the mountains. It had always been waiting in ordinary life. Chapter 12. Remember the power you were never meant to lose. As this journey reaches its final pages, one truth rises quietly above every chapter, every story, and every ancient teaching. You have not been gathering new knowledge. You have been recovering forgotten memory. The greatest wisdom traditions of humanity have always pointed toward this remarkable possibility. Whether expressed through Stoic philosophy, Hermetic teachings, the sayings of ancient sages, Eastern contemplation, or timeless proverbs, they all whisper the same invitation. Remember who you are beneath fear. Remember who you are beneath distraction. Remember who you are beneath the endless noise of the world. The modern mind often believes progress means constantly discovering something new. Ancient wisdom offered a different vision. It taught that the deepest truths are not invented, but remembered. They already exist within the human spirit, waiting patiently beneath layers of habit, fear, comparison, and forgetfulness. Truth is uncovered, not manufactured. This is humanity's forgotten inheritance. Long before the first cities rose, before empires expanded, before libraries gathered countless volumes, every child entered the world carrying remarkable invisible capacities, the ability to notice, imagine, trust, choose, love, endure, forgive, and create meaning. These powers did not belong to kings alone, they belonged to humanity itself. Yet every generation encounters the same temptation: to forget the invisible while pursuing the visible, to strengthen possessions while neglecting character, to master technology while remaining strangers to themselves. And so the ancient cycle repeats. Civilizations become powerful, then restless, prosperous, then empty, connected, yet lonely. The crisis has never been merely political, economic, or technological. It has always been spiritual forgetfulness. This book has invited you to pause that cycle, not by escaping the modern world, but by standing within it differently. You now know that attention shapes experience. Imagination prepares creation. Faith sustains the unseen journey. Silence reveals truth. Will transforms intention into action. Gratitude uncovers abundance. Discernment protects wisdom. These are not abstract philosophies. They are living practices. Every fear becomes a teacher. Instead of asking how fear can be eliminated, ancient wisdom asks what fear is attempting to reveal. Courage is born precisely where fear once stood. Every distraction becomes an invitation to awaken. Every notification, temptation, and restless impulse becomes another opportunity to reclaim attention instead of surrendering it. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to remember. Difficulty no longer appears merely as punishment. It becomes refinement. Like iron entering the furnace, character grows stronger through conscious endurance. Every day becomes a chance to exercise your invisible powers. Mourning becomes attention. Conversation becomes compassion. Work becomes service. Silence becomes renewal. Even suffering becomes instruction. The invisible gradually shapes the visible, one faithful decision at a time. The remarkable truth is that nothing extraordinary is required. You need not withdraw into distant monasteries or ancient temples. You need not possess perfect knowledge. The invisible kingdom is entered through ordinary moments lived consciously. A patient response instead of an angry one. An honest word instead of a convenient lie. A grateful heart instead of constant complaint. A courageous choice instead of familiar comfort. These seemingly small acts quietly reshape destiny. The sages understood something the modern world often forgets. Great lives are built invisibly, brick by brick, thought by thought, choice by choice, long before history notices them. Perhaps that is why every authentic teacher eventually disappears into simplicity. Having discovered the invisible foundation beneath reality, they no longer need constant recognition. Their greatest victories become inward victories. Their greatest influence becomes silent influence. Their greatest wealth becomes invisible wealth. Now the responsibility passes quietly to you, not to preserve these ideas merely as interesting philosophy, but to embody them, to become the living reminder that humanity has not lost its highest inheritance, only forgotten it. One awakened person quietly influences a family. A family shapes a community. Communities shape civilizations. Every lasting renewal begins invisibly, and so we return to where we began. Not at an ending, but at a remembering. You did not learn something new. You remembered something ancient. The invisible is not another world. It is the forgotten foundation beneath this one. Every civilization pointed toward it. Every sage spoke of it differently. Every generation forgot it, and every generation must rediscover it for itself. An old legend tells of a kingdom whose rightful heir was hidden among ordinary villagers as an infant during a time of invasion. Growing up, he believed himself to be poor. He worked the fields, doubted his worth, and often envied those who seemed greater than himself. Years later, an elderly guardian finally revealed the ancient crown preserved since the boy's birth. The young man stared at it in disbelief. "I have never possessed such greatness," he whispered. The guardian smiled gently. "No," he replied, "you possessed it every day, only your memory was missing." The crown had waited patiently. The inheritance had never disappeared. Only recognition had. So it is with the invisible powers of the human spirit. They have never abandoned humanity. They have simply waited for each generation to remember.